Is the coronavirus exposing the nutritional lies we've been told? Find out here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me over on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so be sure to mark your calendars and get here. We try to do a variety of subjects here on Jimmy Rants, so thank you guys for being here today. We also simulcast over here on my personal Facebook page, and people say, hey, can I follow you on Facebook? Well, they cap me out at 5,000 followers, and I'm at 5,000, and I've got a waiting list a mile long over on Facebook. So you guys that get to watch on Facebook, just know there's a lot of people wanting to watch over here, but they're unable to because you guys are here. So thank you guys for being here. You can watch over on the YouTube stream, though. If you go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/livinglowcarbman, all of my lives go there as well at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If you missed the live, though, you can watch it on replay right here on Instagram. We put them right up on IGTV as soon as the show is over. So be sure to pop over there if you happen to miss the episode. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Today is Tuesday, so that means it's Jimmy Rants Day on the Living La Vida Low Carb Show podcast. Today's podcast, I think I am airing the one about how the T cells are destroying COVID-19, and maybe we don't know how many people have actually been exposed to it because the T cell production is killing the virus before any antibodies are produced. So there might be a bunch of people dealing with that. I have another story that talks about that I was going to get into. Another one that says 40% of people with coronavirus may have no symptoms because of the T cells doing their job in your immune system. So go listen to the Living La Vida Low Carb show today, llvlc.com, and you can listen to that show. And then finally, pop on over to jimmyrants.com. It's the official website for this here show, and you can see all the past episodes there. But most importantly, you can support me in two ways. Financially, you can make a donation through PayPal. We have a link right there that you click on. It's a one-time donation to PayPal. Or if you want to become a part of the Jimmy Rants Insiders Club, definitely click on the Patreon link, and a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. Okay, you guys, today I want to talk about a really interesting kind of side effect of what this coronavirus has done. Because when it all went down, everybody went into, lockstep mode of believing everything that they've been told. So everybody stayed home. We stayed in lockdown. When we did get out, we stayed 6 feet away. We wore the mask. We did all the things. And so people have obediently kind of been following what they've been told. And it reminded me, when I watched all this happening and unfolding early on, it reminded me of how people are just very obedient about what they're told about a lot of things. And think about all of the nutritional health information that we have been told our entire lives. Cut your saturated fat, right? People have obediently done that. Eat more healthy whole grains. People have done that. Eat less calories than you burn. In other words, you've got to burn off the calories in excess of what you consume so you can lose weight. We've heard all of these nutrition axioms for so long that a lot of people tend to believe them without ever questioning them. And what I'm seeing now in the era of the coronavirus, of COVID-19 specifically, is we're seeing a lot of the deep, dark nutritional lies that we've been told for our entire life. I'm 48 years old, and so I've been around since right when they were making the dietary guidelines. I remember as a very young kid in the early 80s, I remember being indoctrinated. Taught the food pyramid and having to memorize how many servings of grains that you're supposed to eat a day to be healthy, and how much fat you should be consuming, and no more than, and da 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 da. And I remember at the time that it just seemed odd that this was the way everybody should be eating. But none of us were any the wiser. We were just told, this is how you eat. And so what did we do? Lockstep, just started doing it. You know what COVID-19 has done? COVID-19 has changed the game when it comes to nutrition, because now we're seeing those people who have the worst diets, which then leads to the worst metabolic health, are the ones that are most susceptible to chronic diseases, comorbidities, that then they make them most likely to have the worst effects of COVID-19. So isn't that interesting? With all the belly aching about stay 6 feet away, wear a mask, lock down in your house, da 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 da. Lo and behold, what's the big answer? The big answer is get your health in order. Get your metabolic health, and by extension of metabolic health, you're getting your immune health in order. So if you're just joining us, we are talking about the deep, dark nutritional lies that we have been told year after year, decade after decade. They're now being exposed by COVID-19. I've got a series of stories here today, you guys, that's going to underline this greatly. This first one is from the Herald, Scotland, and it's all about Boris Johnson. He is the Prime Minister of the UK, and he's got this big plan over there to stay fit and healthy, but this op-ed says, no, ignore that, because the ways that he wants to help people be fit and healthy is to count calories, to exercise more, avoid foods that are high in fat, sugar, and salt. And the op-ed writer Joanna Blythman says, this advice is worse than useless. It's what got us into our current mess. And I love this. I love that we're now having this conversation in a very open way that, okay, you have been in control of people and what they're learning about metabolic health and nutritional health for decades. And what is the result? The result is America and around the world in the westernized societies, we are fatter and more disease-ridden than we've ever been before. And you can look at the trend line, guys. Go back to 1980 when they first introduced the dietary guidelines for Americans, which then got adopted by other countries very soon thereafter. And you will see a very direct correlation between when the guidelines began, when obesity started to rise, type 2 diabetes started to rise, heart disease started to rise, all the major contributors to our health going in decline began when they started telling us to eat this very unnatural diet of less fat, less calories, more healthy whole grains, blah, blah, blah. If I can summon upon a scrap of compassion for Boris Johnson, it's this. Public health advice in this country, and again, they're talking about the UK, has been so misguided for so long, it's quite hard to take in how counterproductive it is. From Auckland and Austin to Aberfeldy, nutritional guidelines have been dead wrong since the 1970s, and they have barely changed in the 5 decades since then, despite the fact that we know demonstrably that they don't work. All of us here today, all of you watching Jimmy Rants here today, you can personally attest to an abysmal failure the dietary guidelines have been for your health. Either it manifested as obesity, it manifested as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, maybe you've had a heart attack or a stroke, maybe you've got brain health issues leading to dementia and Alzheimer's disease, maybe you have PCOS, maybe you have any number of conditions that, but for us being told that we need to cut our fat and eat more carbs in the 1980s specifically, when I was still a kid in the 80s, that was all the rage. Oh, cut your fat, it's the way to be healthy. And little do we know, or little did we know at the time, that that was making the problem of obesity and chronic disease much worse than it needed to be. These guidelines were concocted by committees of apparently august scientific experts who either represented vested interests in the food industry or who went along like sheep with this bankrupt advice. Yeah, I've told you, CocaCola actually created a scientific kind of advisory little board. It was a fake kind of meeting of medical people. I've told you this on a previous Jimmy Rants, where their sole purpose was to infiltrate the dietary guidelines with people that will not make their life harder by saying anything about sugar. That's why you hardly ever hear the dietary guidelines say anything bad about sugar, because the vested interests, it's Coca-Cola and some of the big cereal companies, they all have their fingerprints all over the dietary guidelines. And they failed us. This is the thing. It's like if the dietary guidelines was a business, that business would have been out of business many years ago, because it has failed. If the purpose of the dietary guidelines is to make people get healthy and stay healthy, we've only gotten worse in our health. There's more diabetes, heart disease, obesity, I could go down the list today than we've ever had before. And they're not making the correlation. And again, if you joined us late, we are learning through this COVID-19 crisis we're in the deep, dark nutritional lies that have been told to us for so many years. They're wide open, exposed right now. Now, whether people are recognizing it or not is another story, another conversation for another day. But the point is, if you're looking at the people that are having the worst ramifications of COVID-19, either being hospitalized, having major symptoms, or God forbid, being put on a ventilator and dying, those people almost invariably, all of them, have huge metabolic disease. They have comorbidities that are a direct result of the foods that they're putting in their mouth. And if this is the correlation that had to take place in order for people to wake up, then I'm, in a way, glad it happened. I'm really sad to see that good people have had to die and other people get really bad sick. But if we're going to get serious about people getting healthy so that the next time one of these coronaviruses come along, and let's not pretend like COVID-19 is the last coronavirus we'll ever be exposed to. We've had them forever. The common flu is a coronavirus. People forget that. There's a lot of exposure to coronaviruses all the time. But we need to be ready with our immune system. Now it's just too embarrassing for them to admit that this hokum has actively, talking about the dietary guidelines, actively contributed to the public's ever-expanding waistline and ill health. Fortunately, an alternative nutrition establishment has emerged. It deals not in fuzzy epidemiological associations of what bacon makes you 50% more likely to die of cancer, but in rigorous randomized controlled trials and intervention studies. Doctors like Zoe Harcum, Asim Malhotra, Malcolm Kendrick, all in the UK, Dr. Gary Fettke and Belinda Fettke in Australia, Dr. Tim Noakes in South Africa, Nina Teicholz in the US. Their work is all freely available online and well worth perusing. But here's my summary. Over 50% of the food consumed in the UK is ultra processed. That is so transformed from its natural form that even the bulk ingredients are no longer recognizable, let alone the synthetic chemical additions. That's true. Like, people want to say, well, it's just a cookie. What's the big deal? And you look at it and it's like, okay, if it had whole grains, it's been so stripped of the somewhat maybe kind of sort of good properties that whole grains have, because it's been bleached, and it's just this, it's a metabolic storm waiting to happen when you consume refined flours, refined grains of all sorts, refined sugars, refined starches. All of these things show up in the body as disease. You want to know why? The body thinks it's a foreign invader. When you eat something that's not real food, your body has to attack it as if there's something attacking your body. So imagine what's happened for years, you guys. We've been eating these food-like disease agents, this crappy garbage that I like to call. And when you eat those things, your body goes, what in the world is this? Attack, 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 get rid of this. Well, guess what happens over time when you keep allowing those attackers to come in, come in, come in, come in over years, decades? The body gets weaker. The body is tired of the fight. It's like we're always in a war against these foreign invaders. Well, guess what happens when COVID-19 shows up? There's another invader, and guess what? The weary soldiers in your immune system go, we're out. We can't handle this. So you see why metabolic health is so important? You see why that temporary pleasure that may come from having that on your lips actually ends up being a lot more harmful on the back end. Yeah? So what are some of these synthetic chemical additions? Flavorings, colorings, stabilizers, emulsifiers, and more. There's a book called Swallow This, where they investigated food-like constructions and explains why they are the main driver of obesity around the world. Government diet advice should be unflinching here. You want to stay slim and fit? Just avoid ultra-processed food and eat real food. Like this is, I'm often asked, what's the next trend in nutritional health? The next trend in nutritional health is not worrying about a diet, just eating real food. Like, I know real food is kind of not that flashy, but guys, if we just got back to people eating real food, even carb-based foods, if people just switched over from all this ultra-processed food to just carb-based, if they want to, but just real foods, how much better off would we be? I would say massively so. Now, some people are going to need more refinement than just real food. They're going to have to stick to just animal-based foods. That's cool. Others will be able to cycle in potatoes and root vegetables and things like that. But that's cool. And fruits. But the vast majority of people have metabolic disease because of these deep, dark nutritional lies we've been told. So if you just eat real food in its natural form, it's quite hard to overeat. Very few people could eat more than one apple at a go, but many could gulp down a large glass of apple juice, which is effectively sugar with all the fiber gone. Real food will satiate your appetite. Ultra-processed food has dissatisfaction built into it because you'll be left craving more. I think all of us that have eaten a crappy garbage type of diet, you can attest to that. You could eat a whole bunch of cookies, like just a match, and just stuff in your mouth. I used to, back in my carb days, I used to have Oreo cookies. And I was one of those that twisted it off, and I'd eat the top part, I'd scrape off, and I would just have fun. I would eat the whole package. And so when you're done with that, you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of food. Why are you hungry an hour later? And you would. You'd be inevitably hungry an hour later after doing that. Why? Because your body was having to attack this foreign invader because it wasn't real food, and it was devoid of nutrients, and it's the nutrients that give you some of that satiety. Listen to this, you guys. Calorie counting is a distraction. What matters the most is the nutritional quality of those calories. Hear, hear. Puffed rice crackers, for instance, are low in calories. Eggs are much higher, but in terms of nutrient density and satiety, I guess you can guess what is more health promoting. Yes, we can. The high-fat sugar salt obsession presents multiple fatal errors. Remember, Boris Johnson in the UK wants to cut fat, sugar, and salt. So the editorial writer here says, on fat, it fails because it cleaves to this outdated belief that saturated fat is a killer. It's not. Many systematic reviews and meta-analyses of randomized controlled trials have put this lie to rest. But the industrialized, ultra-processed polyunsaturated fats, the vegetable oils and spreads, the margarine, the type we've been told are much better for us, are actually harming us. Like, I'm loving that we're now getting this open eyes to the deep, dark nutritional lies. We've got open eyes to nutritional lies. I made a bumper sticker and didn't mean to. There's no argument about sugar. The less we have, the better. But dietary guidelines tell us to base our meals on starchy foods, which, guess what? raise your blood sugar just as much as straight sugar. Salt is also demonized because it can supposedly raise your blood pressure, but there's no sound science to show that normal seasoning with salt in your home cooking is anything other than tasty. And keep in mind, most people's salt intake is not natural salt in real whole foods. Most people's salt consumption, sodium consumption, comes from ultra processed foods. If you ever look like a frozen TV dinner, gobs upon gobs of fake salt. And so that's where people are getting their salt. Now, maybe for those people in that context, it is bad. But if you're using natural, real salt on top of your food that you're cooking at home, it's very little risk of that. On the other hand, there's abundant research that shows you can't out-exercise a bad diet. Being fit and active has many well-being and health benefits, but you're not doing it to lose weight. Brazil is a country that grapples with a massive obesity problem. They changed their dietary guidelines in 2014. Did you know this? So listen to this. Always prefer natural or minimally processed foods and freshly made dishes as compared to the ultra-processed products. That's what their dietary guidelines say. I wish that UK would do the same. It's the only bit of advice that we really need to know. So that's what they're doing in the UK. They're encouraging, at least it's on the radar screen of the most prominent guy there, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, to do something. The problem is he's falling back on the failed advice. Well, it just so happens that this does have a connection to COVID-19 because there is a study that I found, and it's by Asim Malhotra, one of the people that was mentioned in this article. And they looked at poor metabolic health as a major issue for increased COVID-19 mortality, and they looked at a patient group from the BAME. And so let's see if I could skip to the end so we don't go over this. It's talking about the main causes of the metabolic disease. 80% of them are rooted in your lifestyle and environment. It goes back to poor diet, where most of the people dealing with the most significant weight and health issues have that poor diet. Refined carbohydrates, ultra-processed foods, also inadequate physical activity, which can help with cardiovascular stuff, low vitamin D, and then the various health inequities. We cannot ignore the big picture issues at risk that are at play here. All the biological risk factors, including psychological stress, especially in minority groups, is fueled by socioeconomic factors. There's a disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on these communities. The power of modern medicine is dwarfed by the power of prevention and the wider determinants of health. In our view, the medical profession and policymakers have an ethical and moral duty to be advocates for policy changes to help reduce these health inequities. This would have a far greater impact on population health than downstream individually tailored behavior change. For medicine to fulfill her greatest task, she must also enter the social life. But the evidence is clear. Time for action on metabolic health is long overdue. Otherwise, there will be even more misery and devastation whenever the next pandemic comes around. So again, that was Dr. Asim Malhotra, Rabbi Kamapeli. I've had both of those guys on the Live and La Vida Low Carb show before, but go look it up. Poor metabolic health is a major issue for increased COVID-19 mortality. So really good little paper there. But another guy I've had on my podcast just wrote an incredible story. This one was published in the, LB Times. Dr. Don Layman. So I remember meeting Dr. Layman at an obesity conference about 12 years ago. And I remember he was the protein guy. So whenever they had a lecture that they wanted to have on protein, he's the foremost authority on protein in the world. And I remember many moons ago, even before I started getting into keto, he said, Jimmy, if you're going to eat 3 meals a day, you want to have 3 meals that has 30 grams of protein in them. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So it's 90 grams of protein for the whole day. He said, yeah, it could probably bump a little higher, but you don't want to go much higher than that. But he was the one that put it on my radar screen. Make sure at each meal, not cumulatively for the day, not making it up at the end of the day when you had, other things earlier in the day. No, each meal needed 30 grams of protein. Thought that's interesting. He was way ahead of his time, wasn't he? His op-ed, How Defeating Coronavirus Starts at the Dinner Table. COVID-19 disproportionately afflicts the low-income Americans, like we were just talking about. Adults in households earning less than $25,000 a year are twice as likely to get serious complications from coronavirus as those who earn more than $50,000 a year, according to a new Kaiser family analysis. This disparity is quite tragic, but it's not surprising. Poor Americans suffer from chronic conditions at far higher rates than the general population, and those underlying conditions make folks especially vulnerable to the coronavirus. Can I tell you, if you make less than $25,000 a year, that is why they have ramen noodles on sale. That is why they put Little Debbie snack cakes on sale. It's why they make CocaCola 3 for $10 for the 12-pack. Those are the people they're targeting. And it's unfortunate because those are the very people that could stand to be helped the most to prevent what's happening to them now during COVID-19. Chronic diseases often result from these kind of habits, not just from inadequate medical care, which is a factor in this as well, but from the unhealthy diet. A 2018 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association looked at more than 80 different risk factors for premature death. Poor nutrition, get this guys, was the single most influential factor contributing to more than 520,000 deaths just in 2016 alone. Guys, if that is not eye-opening enough that if we just changed our diet, you could prevent just over 500,000 deaths. Now, I know it's tragic what's happened with COVID-19 and the 100 and however many thousand it is now that have died, but come on. Annually, over 500,000 people die just because of the poor nutrition? Why is this not front page news? Why haven't people changed before now? And even now in the midst of COVID-19, and we're seeing all the ramifications of what poor metabolic health is having on the people getting this virus, even now people are just like oblivious to this. Why isn't this the front page news coming out of the mouths of the public policy people in charge of public health right now? Like, it just ticks me off to no end to know that we could be preventing a lot of people from having the worst ramifications of COVID-19 just by changing their diet and encouraging them to do something proactive in that way. Like, is anybody else as frustrated about that as me? It seems to me the obsession over wearing a mask and staying 6 feet apart and socially distancing and blah, 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 blah. You're not helping us. Now, we in this family, you guys watch Jimmy Rants, you're in the know. But you know you're in the minority, right? Most of us are the weirdos. We're the conspiracy theorists. We're the, oh my God, there you go, talking about cutting your carbs and eating meat again. Oh my God, you're going to die of heart disease because you eat that meat. Meanwhile, they're the ones that are at greatest risk, right? In short, we could avert literally millions of fatalities each year simply by adopting better nutritional standards. And we can start by destigmatizing animal-derived foods. That is a biggie, guys. Like when I saw the video of the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats say that if she had her druthers, she would change the dietary guidelines to get rid of red meat. And I'm going, why would you say that? Like, what is the motive to get rid of red meat in people's diets? Red meat is potentially the most nutrient-dense food you could possibly put in your mouth. And yet, there are people that believe, erroneously, that somehow it's harming your health. There's been no randomized controlled trials that show animal-based foods harm you whatsoever. They just don't. They're optimal for you. For more than 30 years, nutritional experts have admonished people to minimize their eggs, their milk, their red meat, all to avoid cholesterol and saturated fat. This was misguided advice so pervasive that in the 1970s, government officials endorsed these guidelines to tell Americans to limit their intake of protein. By and large, Americans stepped up and they did that obediently. Over the past 40 years, Americans have reduced their intake of milk, eggs, and beef more than 30%. In the 1970s, the average American ate nearly 70 pounds of beef a year. That's a lot of beef. By 2015, that figure dropped to about 40 pounds, which was a drop of more than 40%. Of course, we still need to get our calories from somewhere, so most Americans replace their eggs, milk, and beef with carbohydrate. According to Harvard University and Tufts University researchers, carbs now make up a lot more than 50% of the American diet. This was the shift that destroyed our health. As we shifted our diet focus away from protein and more towards carbohydrates, obesity and diabetes surged, and a public health crisis ensued. Today, more Americans than ever before are overweight and or diabetic. Indeed, scientists recently discovered a clear link between high-carb diets and poor health outcomes. One study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that there was a correlation between Americans' intake of corn syrup, a common refined carb, and the rate of type 2 diabetes. High fructose corn syrup in most sodas. But it found no link between type 2 diabetes and eating fat and protein. This is why so many of us in this space are still so passionate. Show us the evidence that what we're saying is harmful. And what we're learning is the deep, dark nutritional lies we've been told for decades. The chicken has come home to roost. People are noticing that they've been lied to. The good news is that public health advocates can solve this problem very simply. Encourage Americans to reverse course, replace the ultra-processed and refined carbs with high-quality, protein-rich foods like beef, dairy, and eggs. Scientific research shows that these protein-rich diets help to correct body composition as well as prevent and fight illness. Protein will increase muscle mass, which helps fight off disease. There was a study in 2019 in The Lancet found that skeletal muscle strengthens the immune system, especially as we get older. Or consider chemotherapy patients who experienced debilitating nausea, vomiting, and weight loss. A 2018 Indiana University study found that having more lean muscle mass actually helped them tolerate the side effects from the chemo. Meat, milk, and eggs are the best sources of protein to maintain that muscle health. A 2015 study in the Journal of Nutrition found animal proteins outperform soy and wheat protein when it comes to powering the body to build muscle. Red meat has been especially villainized, yet it's particularly helpful fighting off illnesses. Why? Because it has a rich amount of iron, zinc, and selenium, along with vitamins B3, 6, and 12. Just consider iron, which increases the number of T cells, going back to your immune system again. It takes iron, the human's body's first line of defense, creating these T cells. All it takes is just 4 ounces of beef to consume 17% of the USDA's recommended daily iron intake. So, will eating meat cure COVID-19? No, it will not. But millions of Americans suffer from chronic conditions caused by their poor nutrition. They are overwhelmingly low in income. And if we hadn't dramatically cut out the consumption of high-quality, nutrient-rich foods from animals for the past half century, there would be a lot fewer diabetics and obese patients in the wards struggling to breathe. Dr. Don Layman wrote that. Fantastic article. And he's right. We have radically changed just about everything when it comes to our diet. And the ramifications of that are being exposed by this COVID-19. I'm hopeful that people are maybe connecting the dots. Maybe they're finding people that are speaking truth and they're finally having their eyes open, but I just have a feeling people are just kind of going along. Okay, this will pass eventually. I hope we'll get the vaccine. That'll take care of it. Meanwhile, a lot of people are saying, well, deal with it now. Get your metabolic health right now. This is the thing. You can change that radically in a very short period of time. Like within 1 month, you could be metabolically healthy if you do the right things. Seek out someone to help you with that, but get off the crap and eat real food is a huge first step in all this. All right, I want to see what you guys have to say on this one, because this was a really deep one here today, but I feel this really passionate call that we need to take this opportunity of something really horrible that happened in the year 2020, everybody being exposed to the coronavirus and all the other things associated with it, when we didn't need to. We didn't need to worry about this. This didn't need to be a thing. And don't believe the lies you read in the news media. Well, healthy people are getting the coronavirus. That's bull. That's crap. Yes, there's a few people that are having issues with it, but for the most part, the people that are having the worst symptoms and that are dying from this, almost to a T, all of them have comorbidities, which means previous diseases. They have metabolic damage. They have nutrient deficiencies. Let's not pretend like somebody really, really healthy is succumbing to this. No, it's not. And we're seeing that those nutritional lies we've been told, for decades has killed people in 2020. Directly killed people. And unfortunately, you can't prove that. Can't go after them, but I have longed for the day when a class action lawsuit could be filed against the USDA for all the lies they've told. And it's not just the USDA, it's all the people that are complicit in it. And if they could trace it back to these companies, especially the food companies like CocaCola and others, there would be a reckoning. Again, proving it is another thing, but something needs to be done. And hopefully 2020 is waking people up that this deep, dark, nutritional lies that we've been told for years, decades, has got to come to an end. All right, guys, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to come over here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. Maman on Keto says, I'm amazed how many people know this truth, but they choose to ignore it and still eat this crap because it hasn't become real for them. But that's true. They're in full knowledge of it. But they say, well, I'll deal with it later. And people kick the can down the road until they kick the can. And when they kick the can, there is no can to kick down the road anymore. And that's sadly repeated over and over and over again. And if COVID-19 and the severity of everything that's happening with this isn't the wake-up call that people needed, I don't know what's going to wake them up. Seriously, like this is the weirdest thing in my lifetime from a public health perspective. And if we're seeing all the people dealing with obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic damage, insulin resistance, they're the people that are most susceptible to COVID-19, I would think that would be a wake-up call. But yeah, I don't know what's going to get people to shift away from the crap. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? Takes a while to get your health back in order. Could take a year or more. No, Daryl. No. Daryl, you can get your health on the way to being really good within like a month to two. Depends on where you start from, obviously. If you're out of control type 2 diabetes and your A1C is 14, okay, yeah, maybe you need a little bit longer. But most people that just have a minor bit of insulin resistance, maybe a little more severe, but not quite type 2 diabetes or some of the other things going on, you can turn that around really fast. I remember Dr. Barry Sears helped the world's fattest man from Mexico. His name, he's died now, but his name was Manuel Uribe. And I remember Manuel Uribe, what was he? 1,268 pounds was what he was. And within a month of being on Dr. Sears' program, he was able to have his blood sugar under control, his insulin under control, his inflammatory markers under control. For the most part, on the inside, he was metabolically healthy. That's how quick it turned around for him. And so I disagree with you that your health has to take a year or more to get back in order. You can switch this around very quickly. Now, the weight will lag and it'll be the last thing that goes off. You can also probably improve health even more, but let's not pretend like you can't switch this around really, really fast. Jimmy says, I totally agree. I'm dealing with COVID right now. I'm convinced that I wouldn't be handling it so well 7 years ago when I was over 500 pounds and eating the SAD diet. Well, Jimmy, I hope it goes through your system and you're able to fight it off. I'm sorry to hear you're dealing with that, but hang in there, man. It sounds like you did save your life by what you did 7 years ago. So good job, man. Thank you, Facebook. Let me pop over here now to my YouTube channel, see what you guys have to say. Craig says, calories in, calories out is the deepest, darkest nutritional lie. 1,000 calories from steak equals 1,000 calories from Twinkies. Come on, man. I agree with you, man. Doc Connector says, before seed oil consumption, cancer, stroke, heart disease were unheard of in medical journals. Weight gain has more to do with toxicity than it does calorie intake. It's true. Company gone, so it's a day of catch-up. Well, welcome, Linda. I'm glad you're here. Craig says, if the leaders Fauci and Birx came out today and said eat real food and keto can boost your immune system and thus lower your chances of dying from COVID by 100%, what percentage of the general population would make the change? Well, I don't know, but I'd love to see that happen. Like, say something about how to boost your immune system. They're saying nothing right now. The problem for the elite is that meat contains saturated fat and cholesterol, which the brain is made of. The elite don't want the people to be too smart or they might discover the deception. Well, and said the vegan brain will shrink by as much as 30% under autopsy. I don't know about that, but that would not surprise me. I do know that the brain does require fat because you're all a fathead. I didn't call you a bad name when I called you a fathead. You're literally a fathead. We all have about 70% fat in the noggin up there. And so when you have a devoid amount of fat in your diet, how can you expect for your body and your brain to function as the way it's supposed to? You've got to feed it the basic raw materials that it needs to thrive. I've got a little bit of time at the end here, and I found this other article from the Daily Mail about a blood test predicting whether coronavirus will kill you. Researchers have looked for 5 signs of inflammation and blood vessel problems that could tell doctors which COVID-19 patients are at risk for fatal infection. So I printed out those 5 markers. These are 5 blood markers that you could have run. You could either do it at your local doctor's office if they'll do it, or you could run it on your own. Any lab test now is one of the more popular ones, privatemdlabs.com. There's a bunch of these online lab companies that you could run these 5 specific ones. Some of them may be familiar because I've talked about them before. Others of them you may not have ever heard of before. But if you run these 5, you can predict your metabolic health. You guys want to hear this? Give me some hearts. Give me some hearts. Say something if you want to see this really good information here. I got plenty of time left to go over all of these and answer any more questions that you have to share. What? Nobody wants to see this? Are you awake? Hello? Are you awake? It should be going crazy with comments and hearts right now because this is really good information. Okay, now we're getting a few. It took a while. I had to wake you guys up, so. All right, so grab a pen and paper, grab your phone, something, so that you can take notes, because this is quality information. You ready? Number one, these are all blood tests that you can have run, you guys. IL-6, so it's IL-6. It's short for interleukin 6. It's one of several cytokine immune cells that raises the alarm to other parts of the immune cell and can indicate an out of control inflammation. So you want to check IL-6, okay? Because the first thing that happens when COVID-19 comes in your body is the cytokine storm. Well, guess what? This IL-6 is the thing that tells the rest of the immune system, hey guys, it's like the Paul Revere. The British are coming, the British are coming. Well, in this case, COVID's coming, COVID's coming. And if IL-6 isn't working right, you don't get that alarm. And then it starts to overtake. So IL-6, that's the first one. The second one, D as in dog, dash Ddimers, D-I-M-E-R-S, D-Ddimers, which are bits of degraded protein detectable in the blood after a clot disintegrates and signal that the virus may be attacking the blood vessels. Okay? So D-Ddimers. This is another one that will predict whether the coronavirus is going to kill you or not. You want to get that tested. Then the next one is one I've talked about quite a bit on here. And it's high sensitivity C-reactive protein, HSCRP. It's released by the liver in response to inflammation. Again, you're trying to get these inflammation markers that will tell you if you already have inflammation in the body. Because if you already have pre-existing inflammation and then COVID-19 hits you and that brings on inflammation, it's going to be hard for your immune system to distinguish between the inflammation that was already there because of your crappy diet, carbs and seed oils primarily, and now this virus that has entered your body and your immune system trying to fight it off. It can't hear the COVID-19 cytokine storm because it's already dealing with another storm of inflammation in your body. So HSCRP was the third one. 4, LDH, or lactase dehydrogenase. It's an enzyme in lactic acid that the body sends to heal damaged tissue. So once damage starts happening in the body, this LDH is what helps to heal some of that tissue. So you want to know where you are on that one. And then the last one you probably have heard of before, ferritin. Ferritin is a protein that helps the body's cells store iron. So iron in turn is crucial for healthy red blood cells that carry oxygen throughout the body. Too much or too little ferritin can signal either anemia or an infection. So again, this was in a story in the UK Daily Mail. Could a blood test predict whether coronavirus will kill you? The 5 signs for inflammation and blood vessel problems. You could probably Google that headline or Google 5 signs, coronavirus, COVID-19. And then I printed it out so I could talk to you guys here today, all those tests. So I hope that was useful information. We need all the help we can get right now, because the powers that be on high are not given us this kind of information. So eyes wide open, guys. I hope that was helpful. But deep, dark, nutritional lies, I hope you see now. They're being exposed for all the world to see. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Come over here to Instagram. That's where all the fun begins. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So be there, be square. We also go live over simulcast on my Facebook page. So thank you guys for being here today. And finally, over on my YouTube channel, got a ton of people over on YouTube today. Thank you guys for watching here today. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on IGTV right here on Instagram. We'll put that up shortly after the show is over here today. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube. Just type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Today is Tuesday, so we have the best of Jimmy Rants over on the Living La Vida Low Carb Show podcast today. So go check that out, llvlc.com. And then finally, pop on over to the official website, jimmyrants.com. And while you're there, you can see all the past episodes, but you can support my work one of two ways. I do have a Patreon link. If you want to be one of the Jimmy Rants insiders, definitely click on that. And a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. Or by popular demand, a lot of people said, hey, can I send you a one-time gift? So we set up a PayPal link. So you click on the little PayPal thing and you can make your donation that way. But thank you guys for being here today, and we'll be back again real soon. Bye.